Hello, I am your host for Science is the Study of the Creation of God. My name is Relevant. My first name is Ear. The reason why this particular show is being produced is because of the dogma surrounding the belief in the Bible and the actual historical document that is. The physical evidence that for whatever reason science has deliberately overlooked, and the dogma that many people would like to use science to disprove the Bible rather than the fact that science itself is the study of God's creation. First thing that we're going to be starting out with today is Darwin's theory. It's the best place in order to do it. It's the most broadly misunderstood, atheist point of view that has been around. You see, Darwin's theory basically states that because evolution exists, that God could not possibly exist. However, I suggest that we try to do this in a simple exercise. So let's just simply write a story. What is the elements, the 6 elements of a news story? Who, what, where, how, when, and why? Who is God? What is creation? Where? Well, a planet near you. How? How about Darwin's theory? I mean, this is the method that God used in order to create the life on Earth. And we all know that if you cross a horse with a mule, you wind up getting a donkey. And a donkey, or is it a horse with a donkey and you get a mule? I think that's right. Horse with a donkey and then you get a mule. And here's the problem, folks. Mules cannot have children. They're sterile. When you mix these species together and come up with another species, these species have a barrier between them that prevents them from proliferating. So exactly how is it that Darwin's theory just simply does describe part of the story of the creation of life rather than an argument trying to destroy it? How can you take one element of the story and claim that that actually proves or disproves the entire story? Okay, in reality, it's exactly the opposite. And that's probably our best example because, let's face it, can you imagine if God is in our image and let's say he is in the infancy of enjoying the creation of life. So he creates a bunch of one-celled amoeba and he gets really carried away. Lots and lots of one-cell amoebas all over the place. And he sits there, like, it's getting a little crowded in here. Maybe I ought to give one of them teeth, and get rid of a few of these things, And he does, and it's taking a little while. So he gives one of them a backbone, and able to wiggle. And, oh, look at that. He's going at it. Well, okay, let's make a few more. And, it's getting a little bit, less dense in here. This backbone thing looks fun. So he gives them a couple of fins, makes them swim faster, but now they're a little bit too efficient at what they're doing. And so he gives the other ones, a couple of fins in order to be able to run away. I mean, this is Darwin's theory. This is the practical upshot of Darwin's theory, and I can just imagine if we had a 3 or 4-year-old sitting in a room creating life, how carried away this 3 or 4-year-old in its enthusiasm would be, and then getting very diversified and enjoying it. Take a look at the power this being has in order to create all sorts of wonderful life. And how you can sit there and again take who, what, where, how, when, and why, and remove one element of that and try to disprove the entire story is beyond me. But there it is, folks. For over nearly 100 years, we've been having this argument about Darwin's theory, and all the time it actually supports the Bible and it doesn't destroy it. So that's actually the things that we're going to be looking at in this production. I hope that as we explore the scientific, historical document that the Bible is, that you too can join us and actually start thinking about these things, because it does say in the Bible to just simply look around you. There's wonders all over. The next topic that I'd like to get into is actually Well, there's so many other things, okay? I mean, let's face it. Let's take a look at the Bible itself. Okay, let's do that. Let's take a look at the document that we've been using for the last 400 years. And for whatever reason, Christianity apparently didn't have permission or did not have a stronghold prior to King James creating the portable document known as the Bible 400 years ago. You know, God did not need King James' permission in order to leave a record on this earth. He didn't. There's no way that King James, other than the fact of being a king, has any business with God. He answers to God ultimately, just like the rest of us do. And that's rather confusing, but it's strange how the Catholic belief says that since King James made the Bible, God stopped working and there's nothing left in order to document. I don't think so. I think that God is alive and well and is doing wonders every day, but do we give him credit? Do we actually sit down and say, okay, 600 years ago, 800 years ago, whatever the story is, that God gets credit for these acts? And just simply because the Bible refers to the first, the Old Testament and then the New Testament being the testament of Jesus Christ, why is it that we stop at Jesus Christ? Is that the last thing that God did on this planet? Really? Come on now. We have books and records dating back 2,000 years, 10,000 years. Jesus refers to writings that were 2,000 years prior to him. He was here because of that. How long did we have the prophecy Jesus would come? So where are these documents? Are they stored in pagan beliefs? Are they stored in early Christian? Because obviously it wasn't early Christian prior to Christ. So what actually was the formation of the Christian belief, and what was the actual formation of the different religions that are on this planet today? And that's another thing that we're going to be diving into right away, because let's face it, you can't have, 30 million people following a religion and that religion not contain the truth. Well, we can say that it contains a lot of dogma that man has created, that's for sure. But exactly how do you get, 8 million, 9 million people following a religion and it not contain the truth? Don't you think that all religions must contain the truth, whether it be Buddhism, Muslims? These doctrines that they're running around with, the writings that they're writing around with, are a lot older than the declaration of their religion. We can go back to the Mayan times and find, references to what we would refer to now as God. And for some reason, it keeps changing with each language and thought. These things keep changing, and it's very amazing how you can just simply change the name of something and it's complete mythology. It isn't. It comes back to 3 blind men and the elephant is what it is. You see, 3 blind men, way long time ago, before we had cars or anything like that, were all beggars in a town, and they were going around and they were begging, and they would always get together at noon in order to share anything that they had been able to collect. One day, an elephant came through town, and each one of the blind men seen the elephant separately. And the first blind man forever would say that it was a snake. The second blind man would say that it was a wall standing on great pillars. A third blind man came and said it was nothing more than an oversized pig and brought physical evidence to prove it. Here's the issue, folks. Which blind man was actually right? And which blind man was actually wrong? All 3 were right and all 3 were wrong. The problem is, from their point of view, the actual concept of an elephant was completely beyond their understanding. Just like all the different religions, no matter how old they may be today, it is beyond the understanding of any one religion to capture the entirety of God. And, it doesn't matter what you believe. You can be Muslim and listen to this program. You can be follow Hindu practice. You can be any religion in the world and find one truth, and that is all religions do contain truth. The question is, how much dogma do we accept from each one of these religions, and why? Each one of these religions have always been a subject to the manifestations of man and the desire of man in order to gain power. And that's what this program is about. We're going to take a break and come back in a moment. You're listening to WBOU, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Science is the study of the creation of God. I am again your host, Relevant, first name Ear. We were talking about the relevance and the historical document known as the Bible, created by King James and widely accepted as the first and final word of God, which is extremely strange because have you ever considered the fact that the Bible in its entirety actually does require an entire monastery in order to hold that information? And that is what the Bible that we use portably has been distilled down to. It's come from a monastery, and they went through all the records of the monastery, exactly what would the commoners, the people that are not royalty, want to know or should know about God. And, that might just answer why, during these times, in any particular location, maybe 10 or 15 people at the access of the king could actually read or write. The king himself may not have been able to read or write. I think that it would be mandatory in his upbringing, but still at the same time, the amount of people that could actually read and write was extremely limited. Many people walking around faking the fact that they could read or write probably caused a lot of havoc in their own days because everyone else depended on the fact that they could read or write, and if a proclamation come down from the king, he would have the messenger read it to him and then pretend in order to make up his own story of what that proclamation may have been. But imagine the havoc, someone let's say in the gallows gets a king's pardon and it comes through and the guy decides in order to just sit there, doesn't read a word of, oh, well, you're dead. But it makes me wonder how often this actually happened. But how often have you thought that many of the monasteries have a vow of silence? Could it be the fact that as these documents, and they grew so old, as to become fragile, that these scribes were sworn to silence in order to protect the information that they were actually transferring from an old document into a new document to again be restored and placed back into record at the monastery, and why that information was kept secret? How else could you keep it secret but then to make the scribes take a vow of silence. Does that explain something in plain English to you now? And why so many monasteries have a vow of silence and there's only one or two people that are able to speak for the monastery? Because it does take an entire monastery, even in the Catholic belief, in order to hold the writings and the historical documents of God. And then all of a sudden, you can't really take that out on the road with you. I mean, building and all. Hey, listen, there was a document I do remember reading about that required 2 mules in order to haul town to town. It was over 4.5 foot tall, was 8 foot long, and 6 foot wide on wheels. That's this incredible size book that was one of the first portable versions of what was important, written down, and it required 2 mules to take it, and then you still have a limited amount of people that could read. So that's actually why King James actually created the Bible, because it's something that is convenient. It's pocket stored. You can put it, close to you. It doesn't require a horse and buggy in order to go from place to place. And well, there you have it. It created the #1 seller in all of the world, the #1 seller. And you know something? You can go to any bookstore. They claim to have the #1 seller, but truly, the #1 seller in all the world is the Bible. And it's only because it's become portable. It doesn't require you, in order to visit and fight an entire monastery, in order to find out what is actually contained there. And it's a Reader's Digest version, a watered-down version, what you need to know Bible. And that's it. And the Catholic Church defends it. Blood, guts, and glory, they defend it. They have it in the archives, the largest archive and monastery there is, and that's the Vatican. Imagine how few people have actual access to the Vatican archives. And if you do petition the Vatican, just in order to let you know, and you can look all this stuff up on the internet, you can actually petition the Vatican for a very specific document, but you actually have to identify what that document is and what it contains in order to have anything back. Otherwise, it remains a secret. There is no browsing the Vatican files. There's no browsing the Vatican scrolls. It's impossible. And you have to identify exactly what you're seeking in order to get a copy of that from the Vatican. And many times you will not get that. You will have to actually physically visit the Vatican, go down into their archives, and be isolated in a chamber. You'll be searched. You think the TSA is something. Okay, the Vatican is incredible. You'll be searched. You'll be nearly, stripped down, x-rayed. They'll sit there and look down your throat and look up your birth certificate. And then you'll be put in this small cubicle, and they'll bring in this document. You can review it. They will close that document up. There will be no record, nothing, no notes, nothing taken with you either. It's an amazing process, and there's so few people that have gone through that because there's hardly anybody even knows what's contained in the Vatican. I don't even think the Vatican knows what the Vatican has. So what happened to the documentation, the evidence, and the physical evidence of the creation that God created? What is that? And that is the crux of this show. I hope that I've made you think. That's the biggest part of this show, is to get you to think. And I know that I've made mistakes. I know that I've stumbled over my words. Hey, listen, you want to criticize me? Please criticize me. Contact the station. Let them know, hey, this guy is wrong. Well, did I make you think? Because, that is the whole purpose of this show, is to make you think. Because science itself, and I guarantee you, I've been studying science since I was 8 years old. Any mystery that could be solved by science, I was curious in. I studied it. I ignored all my other studies. And I even ignored the studies in science because I've discovered it was dogma. I got into electronics and found out that a lot of the math is wrong. And it was amazing. By the age of 24, I realized that even pi, this infinite number past the decimal point, could not possibly be wrong. It must be a finite number, otherwise you're creating a spiral, either forever outward or forever inward. Pi cannot be this infinite number going off into nothingness. It has to come back to start. If it has to come back to start, it has to be a finite number, an exact number. It cannot sit there and be fine-tuned, because your starting position is a finite location. Oops. Ever thought of that? Yes. We've been sitting here working with pi 3.14 forever, and it's wrong. It's simply wrong. It cannot be. It does not hold logic. But every scientist, every physicist, every engineer continues to use this formula, continues to sit there and extend it as far as they like, and they have computers trying to expand and find the biggest number of pi that they can come up with. How many digits can they go? And you know something? It's based on a false premise. Because you have a definite starting point, you have to have a finite number in order to arrive back at that exact location. It cannot be an infinite variable. It's as simple as that. Pi must be a finite number. It has to come back to the original starting position, and that is a finite position. So pi also must be a finite position. All right, we're going to be taking a station break here, and coming up, we're going to also be discussing a few other things that you may not have considered.
She seemed dressed in all of me, stretched across my shame. All the torment and the pain leaked through and covered me. I'd do anything ever to myself, just to have her for myself. Now I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do when she makes me sad.
And we're back from the break. This is Relevant. My first name is Ear. I'm the host of Science is the Study of the Creation of God. And you know something, it may take a little explanation for that. In my fourth grade, I had a science teacher that said that. And for whatever reason, ever since then, I have been noticing how many people in the science field, in the archaeology field, absolute master's degree with Bible study, all these different things, for some reason walks away from the absolute proof of God that has been written literally into the surface of the earth. One of the things that I had bumped into on YouTube a few years back was the skeleton of the Leviathan. So many people have looked at the Bible and said, well, this much is true, but this is just a myth. Don't worry about it. And mythicize the Bible. And to be honest with you, that can't be. Either the Bible is a historical document or it is not. You cannot selectively pick out what you want and then throw it back in like it, it's not a pick and choose thing. Either you accept it or you do not. And as a historical document, let's just throw out the spiritual aspect of it. As a historical document, it has never been disproven. Never. There is nothing in archaeology, in science, that has ever been capable of disproving the Bible. And that's what this show is about, because so many people go into science field and then try and make an attempt of using science to disprove God and disprove the historical documents that we've been given throughout history. Can you imagine this? Let's say we go back to the times of the Mayans. They don't even have horse and buggy yet. And you're going to spend the next 2 months carving in perfection a perfected stone in your language, whatever language that is, whether it's pictogram or whatever you want to call it, Sanskrit or pre-Sanskrit, and you're going to spend the next 2 or 3 months carving into this stone a fish story. Complete wild imagination. No. The fact is, just in the last 80 years, we've added over 400,000 words to the English language. And that's just in the last 80 years alone. And that's mostly due to science. If you go down and look up what is referred to as a technical dictionary, you're going to find out that it's incredible. It stands 4 or 5 inches on the table wide. It is well over 20 inches tall and about 14 inches wide. It's a huge book, and this is a technical dictionary. That's all it is. We have been able to define our language so well now that we can refer to it directly, be very specific in what we say. So when we look at the Bible and we look at what vocabulary they had 2,000 years ago or better, imagine how many words we have added in 2,000 years to mean specific things, regardless of what language that you're talking about. It's mind-boggling to even consider how large of a vocabulary that a 4-year-old has as compared to what a 30-year-old would have 2,000 years ago. The vocabulary is expanded, our understanding has expanded, our education has expanded, and then we look at the Bible, and, well, a good example would be when Moses come down from the mount with the 10 Commandments. He found the people worshiping a golden calf that they all pitched in order to create, because he was gone so long, and they just simply got impatient. Oh, well, we're going to create our own and make our own because we've got gold. And what did he do with that? What did he do with the gold? He destroyed it, destroyed the calf, but does anyone remember what he did? He burnt it. And that's what the Bible says. But after he burned the gold, he fed it to the people. Now, there's several different translations of the Bible. You can look this up. I'm not going to give you accordance. I was asked to make accordances for this show. I'm not going to give it to you. And I'll tell you why. If you haven't studied enough about the Bible to even know that Moses come down off the mount, the fact that the people were impatient and created a golden calf in order to worship in replace of God, which he went to go talk to, you don't belong listening to this channel. You don't belong listening to this show. I'm sorry. You need to pick up the Bible and start reading. You don't need to remember such and such number, something, something, Roman, something, something, something. It's ridiculous. Okay? And I'll explain that briefly. You can quote, okay, anything that you like. That doesn't mean you have an understanding of it. I can go to Germany, and after 2 or 3 tries, I might be able to pass an engineering degree in German. and never walk away knowing a single word of German. It was just pure luck. I can repeat the things and the patterns of words I hear, but does that mean I have actually any understanding of that? And I think that's what a lot of our problem is with science, is because these people are walking around repeating things that they learned, and they passed the test, and that's all the test was whether or not you can repeat this phrase, not the fact that these people actually had an understanding of what they actually were studying. And, well, let's go back to Moses coming down off the mount. But nonetheless, when you look at that, what do you get when you burn gold? Molten gold. Would you put that in your mouth? Do you consider that edible at all? So whatever vocabulary they're using, whatever description in the Bible that they're using, the only word that they had in order to describe this that most people during that time would understand is he burned the gold. How many different types of burning did they have? How broad of a statement was burning the gold? Could it have been a form of electrolysis? In recent years, there is a material, and science, I think, and don't quote me on this for sure, but I have only seen it starting to publish maybe in the last 40 years. And it's called monatomics. And gold contains a great deal of monatomic. What that is, you're going to have to look that up yourself if you want to understand that, because again, we're being very specific in our wording. But there is a thing called monatomic gold, the properties of which have been there really isn't a word that I can be proper on, because there's so much dogma dealing with that as well. But if you look up monatomic gold, I think that you're going to have quite a few different interpretations, and mind you, they're completely conflicting, whether it be science or true science or ancient writings and stuff like that. You're going to find out monatomic gold is really an amazing piece of work, and most of your precious elements, gold, silver, platinum, have high levels of monatomic particles in that. One of the things I will share with you on this program is that there's been a lot of talk about the third eye, the pineal gland, and if you were to look in the human body in order to find the highest concentration of monatomics, it's actually in that blind eye. The monatomic is controlled or contained in the optical fluid in this blind eye we know as the pineal gland, and it's exactly like our eyes. The only difference is it doesn't have a lens, it doesn't have an iris, it doesn't have an opening to the outside world. It has an opening to the inside world, and this is where you're going to find the highest concentration of monatomics in the human body. And another little piece of truth is you cannot find any life form that isn't based on the crystalline structure of monatomics. And I'll leave that either for another program or whatever you like. But basically, the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that we have had so many words that we have added to the English language now that when you read the Bible, you have to read it really at a third grade level because these people did not have the vocabulary to describe these things in detail. And actually, the details are moot because the only thing that they're doing is recording a record of what actually happened as their point of view. And that's how come we have so many different points of view being repeated so many times in the New Testament, because it takes that many points of view in order to testify to the existence of God and of Jesus. And we're going to be taking a break here. You're listening to WBOU, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence, but I can't feed all the powerless when my cup's already overfill. Yeah, but it's on the table, the fire's cooking, and the farming babies with slaves are working. The blood is on the table and the mouths are choking, but I'm going hungry. Yeah. I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence, but I can't feed on the powerless when my cup's already overfilled. But it's on the table.
And we're back. Thank you for tuning in today to Science is the Study of the Creation of God. I am your host, Relevant. My first name is Ear. Basically, we've been exploring the different aspects in the dogma of the, common following. You can go to church and bump into all sorts of dogma. The question is, what is dogma? It is a dictation by authority that remains unquestioned. It's just generally a rule of thumb that no one ever thinks about and just continues on, never being able to put together 2 + 2 = 648, and not realizing there's something terribly wrong about 648 being the answer to the question. So basically that's what this show is about, and just basically in order to make people think. Now, I do know that I've got several things wrong. I know that I stumble over my words. If you want to complain about it, please do. Go ahead. Let us know what you think, because, after all, it is you thinking that is the point of this show at all. And again, it goes back to the fact that there is no separation between science and the study of creation that God created. As a matter of fact, science is never wrong. Man is. Mother Nature is never wrong. Man is. The Bible is not wrong. It is not mythology. It is a historical document. What is wrong is man and our interpretation of these things. With that in mind, though, there's a lot of things that is considered omitted from the Bible, and I think I explained that in the first part of the show. But imagine all the different religions that have come along that seemingly worship the sun. And then we worship the sun again in Christianity, spelled S-O-N, not S-U-N. But when you look at the Vatican, it's nothing but a large sundial. And it's amazing that the sundial is actually very correct. And you'll find out at the equinoxes that the phalanx in the center of the square is perfect, right on to a marked item that is within those who have been informed. Which brings us basically, I guess, to secret schools, which I kind of want to avoid, because there's a lot of things, quote, secret in the secret schools, but it's unavoidable because the science that they are creating the dogma to look away and not pay attention is actually taught in the secret schools, not as the truth, but again, as the dogma. And we can look at many different things that might suggest that. Archaeologists that go into the desert in Egypt find different things, and as soon as they try to reference the Bible, they are immediately met with all the others in the profession that say, no, 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 it can't be. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have been ostracized from years of study, 10, 15, 20 years of study, almost retired, and then come up with an amazing find. They've spent 20 years trying to find it here in America, and showing the fact that we had pottery and a ancient civilization that's dating 20,000 years, 50,000 years against the mainstream dogma, that are immediately ostracized, even though that doesn't change the physical evidence that they had found. And again, that's the reason for the show, is we're not necessarily discussing who has been ostracized, but the question really is why this dogma remains when the physical evidence is so easy and plainly in view, and then hidden because of dogma. It's an amazing thing. That's the reason why the secret schools come into play, because the secret schools are actually the ones teaching the dogma. At least in my belief they are. If you happen to belong to one of the secret schools, without giving them any names, and you actually have the truth and you know what the public dogma is, my question is, why haven't you spoken out? I mean, really, what difference does it make if the truth is known? Is it going to change history? No. No matter how strongly you believe in the Easter Bunny, I'm sorry, it's not going to manifest in front of you. Maybe in some quantum alternate reality it already has, but not in ours that I know of. And there's quite a few people that believe in the Easter Bunny, and there's quite a few people that believe in Santa Claus. Depending on your historical point of view, Santa Claus did actually exist. That is based on a truth. And that's one of the odd things about it, because it is language itself that is the original dogma. It is the restriction, and it is the persona of why there is so much misunderstanding in this world. And that goes back to the Tower of Babel, which was again endorsed, created, and it was discovered that man was capable of doing anything. And is that the reason why we have dogma not only in our religion, which would disprove the existence of God and make it all mythical and requiring faith, or would that also explain how come these dogmas are embedded into our science? And so much so that we are creating devices such as a television set that required 50,000 volts or better at the back of the screen in order to generate electrons, in order to use an electron gun to shoot that at the front of the screen, and then somehow control that at 512 lines a second, blah, 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 in order to create a picture. And the absolute brute force that it took in order to do that, rather than working with nature and having an LED, or light emitting diode, or an LCD, light controlling diode, in order to just simply turn on and off and perform the same thing at a much lower power, a much lower demanding rate. And as we are getting rid of the dogma that inundates and this absolute saturation into our science, we're finding out that working with nature and building things that are green energy, working with nature, the forces that are already there and so much more powerful than anything that we can create, actually things work a lot better. And they continue working. We have television, plasma televisions now. We have all sorts of things that we're fascinating ourselves, and then throwing up things like the elections and NFL football as a complete distraction. But it does showcase the effort that man has created in the last few years in order to match the forces of nature and use them for our benefit, and instead of trying to just literally bully ourselves around in nature and create devices of absolute brute force, and using nature to our advantage. I hope that you have enjoyed today. I hope that you will be tuning in next week for the next episode. This has been Relevant. My first name is Irrelevant, because it's not the host that is important here. It's not the identity of any one person. It's just simply the opening of your eye or eyes, depending on what school you come from. And no, I'm sorry, I do not belong to a secret school. But again, all these things are hidden in plain sight. So is the evidence of God's creation. It's right in front of you. And I hope that you can go through today and find the wonder and the beauty that God has created, and understand that working with God rather than working with absolute brute force, we will actually survive the times to come. This has been Irrelevant, and may your God be with you. Thank you for tuning in today, and don't forget to tune in next week.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth,